Ethereum already has a plan to eventually, sort of level up like Pokemon into a DAC, as its core function, as its core company. Right. I think that's cool. Like, have you guys thought about that, or you guys think that there'll always be something like that?
Yeah, just like I described, we're taking a similar approach where the foundation will have zero power whatsoever over the protocol. And the sooner we can get to that, the better. Not like Charles said, not all of the tools to completely get there exist today, but I think they will in the next 12 months or so. And so this is, like you said, got to be something that lives in the cloud and doesn't have a central point of failure.
Did you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah. Well, like Mastercoin, we are trying to focus only on being the software producers. We are producing the platforms to allow other people to launch their own systems, with our goal being to lower the barrier of entry so that anyone can launch a new DAC. If you have a high barrier of entry, for example, requiring millions of dollars worth of ASICs to mine your hardware, you can't release another SHA-256-based coin without the existing powers that be in mining world controlling it. And it doesn't matter what your proof of work is, that's going to be the case. So we want to lower the barrier of entry to allow anyone to launch a decentralized application. And then the free market is the ultimate form of decentralization. And if we provide the tools, the market will do the rest.
I love providing the tools. In fact, we can do Namecoin in 5 lines of code on our platform. That's something we like to mention. It's really important to have the tools, the proper developer experience, and it's really important to interface with your ecosystem and have that nice interplay and ask them what do they want, what don't they like. And I think we have a nice balance here. And I love that Dave is doing some interesting things with Mastercoin, because we're probably going to talk to them on a pretty regular basis. We're going to probably talk to them on a pretty regular basis to help us decentralize our organization, because it's important that the knowledge gets out there. That's our primary focus.
So you brought up something interesting here. And I think it's like the main differentiator between Ethereum and Mastercoin BitShares here is that Ethereum has implemented a Turing complete script system into it, right? And then you two guys have basically, your companies have basically taken a feature set, right? And then there's a feature set that's useful to it, but there's not particularly a language to make it completely open for it. Am I misinterpreting that?
There is and there isn't. So the master protocol is taking a specific standard for encoding the data into the blockchain. So you could say that that's sort of our approach to letting people easily encode this particular type of information into the blockchain. So another project like OT or Colored Coins is taking a different technological approach to encoding that information. So what we have here is really 4 different approaches, at least that I'm aware of, that people are testing out. One is, okay, you can build on top of Bitcoin and you don't have a token, right? That's Colored Coins. You build on top of Bitcoin, you have a token, that's the master protocol. You do your own blockchain, and that is either Ethereum or BitShares. And then if you have no relation to a blockchain, whatever, that's sort of OT, though being an open source project, it's going to end up getting pulled into all of our efforts because it adds a lot of volume of code when it comes to great contract work. Chris has done an incredible job with OT and really added a lot of value to the community. So those are the 4 things that are getting tested, right? Open source, no blockchain; open source, no token; open source on top of Bitcoin; and then open source on top of your own blockchain.
All right, so here, we've got the people here to talk about it. So why don't we talk just about that specific value proposition, and each one of you guys go out, and I'm going to give you just a couple of minutes and tell me why that value proposition is a way to get to this next level of blockchain technology or lack of blockchain technology is what's going to be the driving force behind adoption for your specific entity.
So it starts with asking the question, what is your blockchain supposed to do for you? What's the kind of the purpose of the blockchain? Is your blockchain supposed to be where the features live? Is the blockchain is where your identity management system lives? Is where your decentralized entities live? Or is the blockchain supposed to be something that there when you need it, but interfaces usually with a decentralized application that runs on the client side? So we've been talking a lot with Johan and Chris Odom about integrating open transactions into our ecosystem, because they've done some absolutely phenomenal work. They've really worked hard. And so we say, well, they have this problem with voting pools, and you have to audit the voting pools. Well, that's a trust feature. And the argument they give is if you have enough players in the pool, eventually it keeps people honest. And when we look at Wall Street and other entities, that's not necessarily completely true. So you say, hey, wait a minute here. Auditing can be done by the Ethereum blockchain. That's very, very easy to implement. That's just, again, a few lines of code. So you can take all of your decentralized trading. You can take that price discovery. You can take all the bloat that you would normally incur with running a decentralized decentralize the chain and outsource it to open transactions, but has the same level of trust that you would have as if you ran everything on a blockchain. So that's really the key, is finding those value points and saying, is it going to live on chain? Is it going to live off chain? Where is the application going to be? So the philosophy we take with Ethereum is we have no features. We're like Minecraft. It's just a big open world, and you can build on top of it. If you want to build a computer in Minecraft with redstone, you can do that.
Do you have creepers in Ethereum?
Yeah, we have creepers in the space, man. It's great.
I believe that. Actually, I met the team. I believe you guys have creepers.
Oh, yeah, a couple of them. But anyway, that's the approach we take, is we say, hey, it's this big open ecosystem. It's a Lego, in essence, that you use to build on top of. And the key is incentivizing people like Mastercoin and Colorcoin to see the value proposition in eventually developing on top of our platform. It's showing the BitShares guys, hey, you can do a DAC a minute. If you want to use proof of stake, you can use proof of stake. And you can run all that logic and connect it in a very creative way. So the bloat either lives on a small blockchain that is only handled amongst the people who are relevant, or if you want to pay the expense, it's handled on the Ethereum blockchain. So there's a lot of options that everybody has. And if we give good tools and we're very diligent with this process, eventually those options will become very satisfying, we think, to people. And remember, our goal is to reduce the fragmentation. It's to reduce the isolation in the system. We want people working together. It makes no sense to me that every time we want to do BitMessage, we have to rewrite BitMessage. Why not just have BitMessage as an app and have an API to talk to BitMessage? Why re-implement open transactions? Just have open transactions in the app and just talk to it through an API. It makes a lot of sense to do that, because everybody can focus on the user experience, they can focus on their core mission, and they can focus on the fiduciary duties that they have to the people they've taken money from.
Sure.
All right, you want to jump in?
No, I think he described it well, especially for the master protocol. The core value proposition right now is we have this enormous resource in Bitcoin. It's by far the world's most powerful distributed network. And so when you talk about level of security, it's hard to beat something that's been as well tested as Bitcoin. And so, at least for the value proposition that the master protocol offers is, okay, you can build here on a platform where you know and you trust the implementation that's already been built. With Bitcoin, you know and trust that it's going to have the largest network effect. And that's sort of the immediate approach is you have these tools, let's build on top of them, and it's not as experimental, I think, as some other approaches, though the experimental approaches may be more powerful in the long run. And that's what we're experimenting with, is, right? We know what Bitcoin can do today, and so I see the master protocol as sort of a bet that the blockchain will continue to dominate as a platform. And these other projects are experiments with, okay, we can build different platforms that have different attributes. I think somebody, I can't remember who, brought up the great analogy. The question is Bitcoin TCP/IP or is it SMTP, right? Is it a protocol that was built just for email, or is it general enough that we can use it as TCP/IP? And that remains unanswered. So it really is going to depend on some of what the core devs do. If the core devs decide Bitcoin's only going to be Bitcoin, then it may end up as SMTP. If they decide, okay, we are going to allow, and it seems the direction they're going in with this new update with 0.9 supporting metadata embedded in a way that doesn't bloat the blockchain and anybody can prune out those records if they don't want to store the extra data, it seems like they're slowly moving in that direction where Bitcoin could not only be a payment network and a store of value, but also a general ledger. So that's what we're going to find out.
Well, what we're building is a software library, which is in a Turing-complete language that allows you to build any type of DAC very quickly. One of the things that we're focusing on is the efficiency, the economic efficiency of the system, recognizing that you cannot maintain a decentralized system processing all the transactions from exchanges, from every single business model on a single chain using a single currency. But if you provide the tools and APIs and software, you can build an entirely new blockchain very quickly. And if you don't have to depend upon mining for security, because you've got proof of stake combined with Ripple-style consensus, then you don't have all the expense or the need to centralize into a single blockchain. You can achieve much faster transactions, much lighter weight transactions, which is a critical reason why, if I was going to build a decentralized banking exchange and I had to pick a platform, would I build it on a library that eliminates all the other overhead the fees I would have to pay to process transactions to the Bitcoin network, pay their miners, or the fees I'd have to pay the Ethereum miners, or create a whole new blockchain that doesn't have those fees, and therefore I can offer greater value proposition to both the users and the shareholders in the decentralized bank and exchange. And so the key is to maximize competition. Instead of trying to build one blockchain to rule them all, whether it's Bitcoin or some other blockchain, we want to have many blockchains, each of which is very lightweight, so that someone who only cares about playing a blockchain-based game or gambling or voting doesn't have to process all the bids and asks of the New York Stock Exchange. And that's the key to decentralization, is many blockchains, because blockchains are not scalable beyond a certain point when you only have one chain. You have to go parallel. And to do that, we are developing a software toolkit and trying to teach people the process of...
And I'm sorry to clarify, you said your software toolkit is Turing complete?
I know we got started a little late. How are we on time? Like...
You're good.
Oh, okay. Well, cool. I just wanted to make sure, because we got stuff I want to talk about, and I just wanted to make sure.
And we could go that long.
Just a clarifying question. Your software library, you say, is Turing complete?
What I'm saying is that with C++ or Java or whatever language you want to use, if you can rapidly put together a new blockchain, I can encode the Namecoin transactions in a few lines of code, modifying an existing library, and then release a new chain. So there's a lot of value for the core Ethereum concept, which is effectively a metered computational engine for doing general purpose transactions. And I believe there's demand for that. What I'd like to do is work with people like the Ethereum team to create a version of your blockchain that takes your core technology and combines it with our profit model of minimizing expenses, eliminate the mining, and allow Ripple-style speeds. Then you can get all the benefits you currently have today, only with the benefits that we bring to the table, which is a sustainable economic
So
model.
I would like to applaud all three of you guys, because all three of you guys are for lack of a better word, competing companies. But I have heard all three of you in one way or another say, we would really like to work with these guys. We'd really like to work with them. We think this would be great with that. And I would just say, that's the way to go, okay? Because the truth of the matter is that none of us have any idea how this is going to work out. We have really good hypotheses on how this is going to turn out, okay? So I think that's great. And this working together, I think that's going to be fantastic. And I like that you guys organically said that, we didn't have to beat you over the head with it for that. So
well, that's the beautiful thing of this all being open source. Parts of what Ethereum are going to get dragged into the master protocol, and parts of what BitShares are doing are going to get dragged into Ethereum, and parts of what OT is doing are going to get dragged into all three, right? It's not the solid lines of I'm on this team and I don't like the other team, right? If you're intellectually honest, we all know that these are experiments, and that some of them will succeed and some of them will fail, but we'll learn something valuable each time we run these different experiments, and that will add to the ecosystem as a whole. And I think the thing that bonds us together is we have the same core philosophy, at least with a lot of the folks I've talked to, is the goal here is to build these decentralized systems and to disrupt the old systems which have become corrupt, which have become very hierarchical, whether we're talking about banking or financing. And so that's our core goal. We're going to try a lot of ways to get there, and some will work and some won't, but we can learn from every one of those experiments. And so I really like that about this community.
Okay, so I think there's a good bridge here for something that I think is kind of a hot topic around this, and especially around your three companies. And it's going to piss some people off here, but so it is open source, okay, and anyone can grab it and fork it at any point in time, right? So I make the argument to a degree that, and that's why pre-mining for any of you guys, I think, is a dangerous concept to a degree, because you guys are taking a great amount of risk. You guys are putting a lot of effort into it, and you guys are, for lack of a better word, however you guys want to phrase it, for something in your fundraising model, there was some amount of pre-mine of what you guys are going to have value in your system. Well, you had an auction for it, right? Right.
But it was
already
open, everybody can participate. There was no portion that was set aside for founders that wasn't part of the auction.
Okay.
Everybody equally participated.
Okay,
I do think that's an important.
So that's great. So I'm going to ask you guys to come in, and you guys can talk about it specifically. So like for Ethereum, you guys have been very open about how you guys are going to do the distribution of this initial portion, right. And so I worry with everyone that I see doing hard work on it, I worry of, that issue of you guys are relatively small companies. You guys are all big players in this space, but you guys are relatively small players, and you guys doing a lot of awesome work. And then another company coming in, grabbing all of your hard work, cutting out all of your fundraising portion of it, okay, and taking the value proposition and moving it, and then putting a lot of scale behind it and moving forward and creating this wonderful ecosystem that we all want, and you guys are no longer really a part of it. What reasons there are why you don't think that's going to happen to you, or how you think you're going to mitigate it, or how it's irrelevant and it doesn't matter, whatever. But let's talk about that.
Okay, well, we can take a look at it from a couple of different angles, because this is a very good and it's a very poignant question. First, we look at incentives. So we probably don't like the U.S. government very much, or at the very least, we say the U.S. government has.
I love the U.S. government.
Oh yeah, there we go.
For the NSA listening right now,
but I'll say we as
I was an Army person. I served my country.
But I'll say we as in the Bitcoin community, there's a little bit of resistance there. They don't like things like Prism, and yet the U.S. government is actually a fairly robust shareholder of Bitcoins. They have over 200,000 of them because of the Dred Prior Roberts seizure. And so there's a very strong incentive for the Bitcoin blockchain to have a fork, and that position to be simply divested, either just simply removed, or for that position to go ahead and be reallocated via a faucet or some mechanism. It really is. Because who wants the U.S. government to hold these coins and have control over the ecosystem? And you can pick any possible actor. But a fork is not just pushing a button and releasing code. It's an ecosystem. You have people. They live there, and people have financial incentives. In our case, miners have an incentive to mine. There's chain A, chain B, whichever one they can actually sell on an exchange and make money with. And in case of the investors who bought into the IPO, they're going to stick with the people who deliver value. So what you're proposing, where they fork it and they cut out the pre-mine, is basically firing the founders.
Right. So okay.
And so what I'm saying is, let the market decide. If the founders haven't done a good job, there's probably going to be a fork.
And the market's going to decide.
And I think we can all. Wait, hang on. Let me finish. But let's look at the ecosystem as a whole. Let's say a hard fork does happen. The only person in the world that screws are the founders. Think about that. Because let's say Ethereum A and Ethereum B happens, and for some reason Ethereum B is really popular and it cuts out the founders pre-mine. We still have Ethereum. It still exists. It's there. Does that matter to anybody who's using the ecosystem? It really doesn't matter to anybody who's using the ecosystem. The only guy who gets shafted is me. I'd probably be a little pissed off about it. But honestly,
well, I want to back up to what you just said. When we were talking about the Dred Pirates Roberts coins and how we could technically cut those coins out and false.
But we never did.
Well, so that's the issue, though, right? So in that example that you're giving, right, you're talking about actually messing around with the fungibility of Bitcoin, right? Because if at any point in time we all know that the stuff that we have control of, but I'm saying. But if we know the coins that we have control of, that the core team at some point in time can just decide that we no longer have control of those and we're going to reallocate them to that. Well, I think that network effect, if that's our money, right. That would probably destabilize the whole network just by doing that. Okay, so but with what you guys are building with DACs is that the core value being money is not as important as all of the application stuff that you're talking about. Whereas in Bitcoin, as Bitcoin stands right now, the money is what it's about.
Right.
So so there is a little difference there into what you're saying. I just wanted to point that out there. So so when you're talking about let's cut that portion out of it, because Bitcoin does operate a little bit differently, because right now Bitcoin's about the money. Get them dollar bills, y'all. Stack bits. Go for it.
Well, I just wanted to say I've spent a lot of time thinking about this question, and this is the question I had to ask myself. As the lead for BitAngels, I led the due diligence for the master protocol when it came through our process, and I had to ask myself really, really hard: is this going to have any value, or is somebody going to copy this and fork it and create another version that will have all the value? And it took me a while to wrap my head around that question, because you can say, well, is Bitcoin just this oddity? Is it the only use case where, creating a fork isn't as valuable because all the value is in the infrastructure and not in the code? Or can we apply this model generally? And what I eventually became convinced of is that we can apply this model generally. The value is not in the code. The value is in the people that build on top of the code. It's in the infrastructure. And that was a big revelation for me, because it opens up this model for all kinds of things that aren't cash, that aren't currency, aren't a payment network. I'm not saying that this model will work for everything. I think there might be small enough niches where if you can copy it and there's not much infrastructure on top, maybe it doesn't make sense. But for anything that's widely used enough that there's infrastructure being built on top, people will say, well, should I go with this one that has all the nice infrastructure and the libraries and the tools and all these businesses that are integrated with it, or should I go with this new network that has none of that? And I think rational actors will pick the one with the infrastructure. But what that tells me is that the first mover advantage is enormous in this area. Because if you're the first one to do a fair distribution in a transparent way and build a new technology, people are going to opt into your system over somebody else that comes later. And so that's what I encourage people to do. People think that this revolution is going to take 3 or 4 or 5 years. No. This revolution is going to be 12 or 18 months. Everything you can imagine decentralized, the first version of that is going to get built in the next 18 months. And I'm following 26 protocols under development right now.
My hair is just standing
using
up. That's
this,
great. Yeah,
using this
awesome.
new model, right? This is going to move really, really fast. I don't think people appreciate how quickly this can move, because once you have it in place, people are going to opt for that first category as long as it's been done transparently, it's been done fairly where everybody could participate. But people are going to experiment with different versions. A pool for developers, pool for the Kickstarter, a pool for some user behavior if you still do need mining or something else. So people are going to, I think best practices will emerge based on what people opt into. If people said, I'm not going to participate in that model, people aren't going to adopt that model. The Master Protocol has been really successful. And so a lot of people are adopting that Kickstarter model and mixing it with a similar dev pool. People will create variations of that, but I think best practices are slowly emerging.
I agree completely. It's all about the community that you build. And I like the fact that the community has the ability to fire the founders. That's a pretty cool fact. Think about it. That's what a fork does if you remove the pre-mine.
Yep.
The thing we're adding to the mix is we also recognized, of course, the network effects incredibly important, which is part of the reason why we launched BitShares PTS in November. So we could capture the network effect, build the community, start getting some infrastructure around the BitShares X exchange idea. But one of the things we're doing now is now that we're building an open source library and toolkit, we actually have a software license that if you're going to use our toolkit to build something, you have to honor the founders. So even though it's open source, you can do that. Now, that doesn't stop someone from creating an entirely new language, entirely re-implementing it. But that's, of course, first mover advantage. If you're going to build something new from scratch, you're going to have to go through all the legwork that we've gone through, and it's going to set you back dramatically. And so someone else can come along, allocate 20% to the creators of the open source library that you're using, and take the other 80% and distribute it however they need. If they need to raise funds for development, any of those things. And of course, it's in the software license.
Okay, so you guys are sort of this next gen technology here, and I'm going to use a really probably poor example here. So let's just say like an application like. We had Friendster, and then Friendster sucked, and we built MySpace, right? And then, like, MySpace, everyone had MySpace, right? And they're like, oh, MySpace is going to be it. And then Facebook was just there, and then Facebook became ubiquitous, and everybody had Facebook, So there was this iterative process of, like, you had the core functionality. Like, the core functionality of Friendster wasn't particularly different than Facebook, right? But, no one's on Friendster anymore. I think there's, like, some random countries that are still on Friendster, so sorry to you guys. And now Facebook is more and more coming, where we have some upstarts that are starting to take market share away from Facebook, So on that, do you guys feel that like you're just one iteration in sort of the growth of this technology, and you guys will see additional currencies or additional blockchain technologies built on top of you guys or built to supersede you guys, or is this it? This is going to enable the building of the whole future?
Well, I think it would be hubristic to claim that, Netscape 1.0 was the final web browser. But, I don't want to be Facebook, and I don't want to be Dropbox. I don't want to be any of these services. Those are applications. I want to be the web browser. I want to be the foundation layer, and I want to get everybody behind the idea that we need a foundation layer. And let's talk about how to make that foundation layer work. Let's talk about how to make that foundation layer scalable and easy to develop on top of. And it's a process. It takes a lot of effort, and there's some philosophies on how to do that. But ultimately, I think the best value proposition that can be offered to the cryptocurrency space right now is unity. That's it. We need to start working together. We need to start acknowledging that the problems of BitPay are similar to the problems of Coinbase, or similar to the problems that we have, that BitShares has, that Dave has, and we wake up every day. It makes sense to me to rally behind some core principles. And our principles are real simple. Simplicity is one of them. Modularity, universality, non-discrimination, agility. These are principles that I think everybody in the space can like. I think also we recognize that Bitcoin is quite valuable, but it still has a very small ecosystem compared to global population. The real growth hasn't happened yet. We're not at the billion-person stage or the 2 billion-person stage. So how do you get between 2 million people and 2 billion people? That's the user experience. And you're never going to get a wonderful user experience if you have 26 protocols and 26 standards and 150 coins floating around. So whether your approach is to have a licensed library or your approach is to build the Android or the cryptocurrency space like we're trying, one of these will eventually win. Something will solidify, and then the user experience will very rapidly get better. And eventually, you're going to have all the creativity come on it. Because you think about how many really bright people are in this space who are not phenomenal coders, who aren't really hardcore programmers who write assembly code every day, but they're great designers. The magic of the web was to give these beautiful tools to people to build amazing websites, amazing web pages, without having to be a hardcore developer. We gave them that. And that's kind of the goal here. Say, let's give these amazing tools, whether it be a library, whether it be a platform, whether it be a really robust protocol, or maybe some composition of all three, so that you can walk in there in a very small period of time, 3 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever your dream is, whatever you want to do, you can get it done. That's what I'm trying to get done in this ecosystem. And my hope is Bitcoin starts competing with us, because in the process of competing with us, it's actually going to make the Bitcoin protocol significantly more robust. So that way everybody wins. The whole ecosystem is going to win. Value goes up. It's a rising tide effect.